So today I've got 5 things that I wish I knew in the early years of my homeschooling journey. And the first one is the good old comparison trap. And I know this is not just purely homeschooling related. Comparison is everywhere in the world and it's really difficult to get out of. However, it is a big one in homeschooling circles and it's easy to fall into this because we're all wanting to know where our children are. Where is my child? In what grade should they be? What level should they be in maths? My child is 7 and still not reading properly. Every other child around me is. When we compare our children to all the other children around us, we're losing sight of the beauty of our own children, of their gifts, of their personality, because all we're doing is focusing on what they should be doing and setting these arbitrary levels that we feel our kids should be achieving. And ultimately then, that just leads us to thinking that my child is behind. I'm doing something wrong. I'm failing. I'm failing myself, I'm failing my child, and I'm failing at homeschooling. Comparison creates all of this. Of course, some level of comparison is actually a really good thing. In a sense, some of us are quite isolated when we're homeschooling, so it is a good indication to know where my child is at in some certain levels, as long as we're keeping that healthy, as long as we're using it constructively and not using it in a damaging way to our child and our dynamics within our home environment. However, having an unhealthy relationship with comparison can in fact do a great deal of damage to both our children, our homeschooling, and our overall family dynamics. Comparing your children to others can often lead to a really warped sense of reality, and we start setting bars that are far too unattainable for our children. And then when our child inevitably falls short of these expectations, resentment can set in. In the long run, unhealthy comparisons can only lead to the feeling of inadequacy at best and are completely soul-destroying at worst. So I encourage you to celebrate the individuality of your child, the diversity of your homeschooling and your family. All of you will be much more happier and better off for doing so. A huge thing I've learned in recent years is that it's completely acceptable for children to be in different grades for different subjects. Absolutely, it most definitely is. Although your local schooling system would have you think otherwise, and absolutely they would not want your child to be in grade 5 for maths and grade 3 for English and grade 7 for geography per se. But if there's one thing that homeschooling's taught me, and that is absolutely correct for your child, they can most definitely be at different levels for different subjects because we're all unique. We all don't grow and learn and assimilate knowledge at the same state, or at the same rate, I should say, as our peers. There is no struggling or there is no behind in the homeschooling world. It is just what it is, and we work with our child at the level that they're at. And that is one of the real beauties of educating our children at home. This state of being, when you really think about it, just makes sense. Out there in the world as an adult, we aren't all assimilating knowledge and on that same plane of learning as every other adult in our circle. We're all different, we all fluctuate, and we all learn things at a different rate and different speed. Our children are no different at all. And so therefore, corralling them into this tiny little grade where everything needs to be neat and uniformed just simply doesn't work for every single child. And so we understand that to be true for adults, yet we expect our children to be able to form in manners that we ourselves are not even able to do as an adult out in the world. And the only reason that children in the schooling system are expected to do that is not for the benefit of the child in any way, shape or form. It is for the benefit of the system. It is truly the easiest way to keep children moving along the conveyor belt of grades, keep them all together. It's the simplest system to be used in the schooling environment. And whilst I understand that, and I do see the need for that in the schooling environment, there is zero thought given to the individual child. And that is the one key area that stands out to me, that our children are not individuals in schools. Our children are just part of the bigger factory system of churning them through from grades 1 through to 12. And so no matter how amazing the teachers may be in the environment and how much work and effort they may put in, they simply are tied to these constraints, and it is very, very difficult to get outside of those. And this is a key point and a key wonder of homeschooling and why it can be so amazing for so many families and children. Number 3, I wish I'd known that mixing curriculum styles or homeschooling philosophies and methods was completely okay. I'm sure if you're anything like me in the early years, you often feel that you need to find a style, find a philosophy, or find a curriculum company, purchase everything from that one place and stick with it. Yet that's simply not the case. Of course, if you found a style such as the Charlotte Mason method or the classical education style or maybe Montessori or Steiner and it works brilliantly for you, then that's great. I'm not knocking that in any way, shape or form. But for those of us who sit under this eclectic banner, that doesn't necessarily work in our homes. And you know what? It's okay to pick bits and pieces from all of those styles. And that is pretty much what I've spent the last 10 years doing. I research and I look at curriculums created from all of those different philosophies and all of the different academic industries within the homeschooling environment. In fact, for me, I feel that mixing and matching across the different spectrums actually gives us such a rich, well-rounded experience because we're not boxed in to just this one particular style. We get to pick and choose and use the things that work the best for us across all of them. So my advice is to not just grab hold of one philosophy and stick with it with all of your might. You never know what's out there with the other ones for you to explore and enjoy and what you may get from using something from a different style than what you're currently used to. And just remember, there is no one right method for educating our children at home, and cherry picking can often be the perfect way to go. Homeschooling, just cool like that. Okay, so that's 3 down. I think I have 2 more to go. If you're enjoying today's video, I'd love it if you'd give it a thumbs up down below, leave a comment and hit the subscribe button. Number 4, ignoring the naysayers. I can bet you that the vast majority of us have run into this problem at least once in our homeschooling journey. We've all had those folks that feel that it's their right or their duty, their obligation to let us know how damaging homeschooling is going to be to our children. They'll come to you with all manner of reasons that they can rattle off why this is a bad decision. They'll make you feel guilty about what you're doing and shame you into believing that this is the worst possible thing you can do for your child, that you're going to ruin them for the rest of their life by not sending them off to school. But let me remind you, these are your children, not theirs, your children. You know your children best. You know what they've been through, what their life currently looks like, and what you feel is best for your children. I always say, hand on heart, those of us who are homeschooling for the right reasons will never mess this up. We can't possibly mess it up because we have our children's best interest at heart. So no matter what any expert or close family member may try and tell you, just remember, you do know your children best. You are the one who is with them 24/7. And as I said before, I wholeheartedly believe that any parent choosing to homeschool their child for all of the right reasons cannot mess this up any more so than what may potentially occur in the schooling environment. I can also guarantee you that the bulk of the naysayers don't even understand homeschooling. Some questions to ask yourself when they start at you is, have they homeschooled? Have they worked alongside homeschoolers? Were they homeschooled as a child? Often, naysayers have zero idea of what homeschooling is even like. So whilst homeschooling is definitely becoming more and more acceptable in the mainstream community, there are still definitely many people out there with a warped sense of what homeschooling actually looks like. And they simply do not understand what a childhood could look like without the confines of a regular school experience. And so whilst I agree, in the early days, it can be really, really tough if you're dealing with a bunch of naysayers in your life. I do understand that. It is hard to deal with. But what I encourage you to do is get into the homeschooling community, build a nice friendship circle around you. Those people will give you strength and support and the tools to be able to move forward and deal with the naysayers in your everyday life. And once you've armed yourself with plenty of research, you will be able to move confidently forward in the choices that you've made for your children. And number 5 is that delegating is completely acceptable. Yes, I want to say that again. You do not need to prepare, run every single subject for every single one of your children for their 12 years of homeschooling. Delegating is absolutely, completely acceptable. When I first started homeschooling, I was blessed to meet such a lovely, lovely lady who held my hand and was such an important guide and resource for me in my early years of home education. However, looking back, I now realise that she had quite a warped sense of what homeschooling meant to her, or what she felt homeschooling should actually look like. And for her, that meant that she never ever was going to use outside instructors for her children. All of the homeschooling would be kept in-house, because for her understanding, if she wasn't doing that, she wasn't actually homeschooling. Looking back now, I can see that this is actually a very sheltering way to raise one's child. When they're simply at home, just you and your child, whether it's 1 children, 3 or 4 children, and you're learning alongside each other and never from anyone else. I personally believe that that really is quite a sheltering existence for our children, because we have a whole wide world out there for them to explore and for others to share knowledge with them. So we must embrace the power of delegating tasks within our homeschool. It will free up ourselves, it will free up our anxiety and our mental state of having to sit down, plan and perform all of these subject offerings for all of our children. So for example, if I have a science phobia and then I have a science loving kid in my house, what do I do? Rather than just throw them a workbook and call it science for the day, it's time for me now to seek out opportunities in the community, finding workshops at my local university or community centre, gathering with other homeschoolers and have scientists come and run workshops with us. As the child gets older and the need for a more rigorous scientific education becomes important, maybe I need to look for a tutor and hand most of the subject of science over to someone else to take control of with my child, because I know that that is the best option for them and their future education. This same method can be applied to any manner of subjects or topics within the homeschooling environment. I always say there are reasons and seasons for everything, and when you fall into a season where you need to delegate, embrace it. It is not taking away from the homeschooling environment that you are providing simply because you choose to delegate 1 or 2 subjects to outsiders. In fact, I believe you're only enhancing the education experience for your children. Working with and alongside folks that are outside of our family environment that all have a different level of knowledge and different expertise can only enhance the education that our children receive. And so for me, delegating is actually a really important part of our homeschool. The other point I'd like to make is to keep in mind that it's a rare adult out there in the world that works completely in isolation. I know that it does happen, but it is actually a very rare occurrence. And so therefore, I feel it's important to have our children out there working with others, being with others and getting used to what that can look like for them. So that's the 5 things that I wish I'd known when I first started homeschooling. Let's just quickly recap them, shall we? So that first one, I wish I'd known about the comparison trap. Number 2, I wish I'd known that children can most definitely be in different grades for different subjects, and that's completely fine. Number 3, I wish I'd known that mixing curriculum and methods of homeschooling is completely acceptable and in fact may just provide us with a more richer educational experience. Number 4, ignoring the naysayers. That one I know can be a tricky one and it can take time, but if you can work on that, it will really help ease your concerns and make your homeschooling lifestyle just so much simpler and smoother. And number 5, that delegating is completely acceptable. Overall, I just wish I knew in the beginning that homeschooling should look as unique as each individual family does. There is no one right way to homeschool. Homeschooling needs to work for you, your children and your family, not what happens out there in the rest of the homeschooling community. So whether you're homeschooling 1 or 10, whether you're a young family or an older family, your homeschooling is completely unique to you, and that is the true beauty of educating your children at home. There is no other homeschool that can possibly look like yours. So embrace every up and down, because there will be lots of them. Travel the hills and the valleys as best you can, and embrace all of those moments over the years of educating your children at home. Because you know what? It is such a gift. It is such a gift to give that to ourselves as mothers, to be around our children and see all those wins that they go through that most others miss out on seeing because our kids are at school. It is such a gift for our children to give them a childhood that is free, that is magical, that is full of spare time to be outside exploring the world. Those are all the beauties of homeschool. And my biggest thing I've learned is to try not to sweat the small stuff, because most of it in the end is just small stuff. Instead, learn from those little mistakes, carry on and create a homeschooling environment that you all love. So that's it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you outsourcing some of your homeschooling components? I'd love to know which ones you are. So let's chat about it. So pop something down below. And don't forget, if you enjoyed today's video, I'd be ever so appreciative if you gave it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. So until next time, and I will see you all again soon. Bye for now.